It was a typical Tuesday afternoon when the universe decided to collectively lose its shit. I mean, sure, we'd been at war with the Zyx'narians for the better part of a decade, but let's be real, nobody actually cared. It was more like a cosmic slap fight than anything else. The Galactic Alliance had been valiantly struggling, read, half-heartedly poking, against the Zyx'narian Empire for years, and the most exciting thing to come out of it was a shortage of space pineapples. Oh, the horror. But then, like a drunk uncle at a family reunion, humanity decided to crash the party. Now you've got to understand something about humans. They're special. And I don't mean that in the all bless their hearts kind of way. I mean it in the holy crap, what kind of insane asylum did these maniacs escape from kind of way. The rest of us in the Galactic Alliance had been tiptoeing around the war, trying not to spill our cosmic tea. Humans? They came in like a wrecking ball on steroids, riding a nuclear-powered unicycle while juggling chainsaws. It all started when Ambassador Vk'thorn of the plea delegation made the grave mistake of actually asking the humans for help. I was there, unfortunately. Picture this, a grand chamber filled with representatives from 100 different species, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Vk'thorn, with his 7 eye stalks twitching nervously, approached the human representative. Esteemed delegate of Earth, Vk'thorn began, his translator struggling to keep up with his rapid clicks and whistles. We humbly request your assistance in our ongoing conflict with the Zyx'narian Empire. The human, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, looked up from what I can only assume was a game on her communication device. She blinked slowly, like a cat contemplating whether to knock a glass off a table. "You want us to join your war?" she asked, her voice dripping with a level of sarcasm that would make a black hole feel inadequate. Vk'thorn, bless his gelatinous heart, missed the sarcasm entirely. "Yes, your species' reputation precedes you. We believe your unique approach could turn the tide of this conflict." Sarah snorted. It was a sound that made half the chamber flinch. "Our unique approach? Buddy, you have no idea what you're asking for. But sure, why not? I've got nothing better to do this week. Let me make a call." And just like that, with all the gravitas of ordering a pizza, humanity decided to join an intergalactic war. Now, most species would take months, if not years, to mobilize for a war effort. Humans, they treated it like a last-minute group project in college. Within 24 hours, Earth was buzzing like a hive of caffeinated bees. I had the misfortune of being the liaison officer assigned to the human fleet. When I arrived at their flagship, the USS Hold My Beer, yes, that was its actual name, I was greeted by a scene of controlled chaos that made my 3 hearts skip a beat. The command deck looked less like a military operation and more like a frat house planning the ultimate prank. There were holographic displays everywhere, but instead of showing strategic battle plans, half of them were running what the humans called memes. I saw one image of a cat in a military uniform with the caption, "I can has victory." I still don't understand it. Admiral Jane Mad Dog Martinez was sitting in the captain's chair, feet propped up on a console, sipping something that smelled like it could strip paint. When she saw me, she grinned in a way that made me want to find the nearest escape pod. "Welcome aboard, Ambassador Zyx'narian," she bellowed, mangling my name in a way I didn't think was physically possible. "Ready to kick some Zyx'narian ass?" I tried to maintain some semblance of diplomacy. "Admiral, I must stress the seriousness of this conflict. The Zyx'narian Empire has..." Yeah, she waved a hand dismissively. "Big bad aliens, threat to the galaxy, yada yada. Look, we've gone through their specs. Their ships have more weak points than a soap opera plot. This'll be a cakewalk." A young officer piped up from his station. "Ma'am, the Zyx'narians have over 10,000 ships in their fleet. We have 47. Martinez's grin grew wider. If it stretched any further, the top of her head might have fallen off. "Exactly. It's almost unfair. Maybe we should fight with one hand tied behind our backs to make it sporting." I felt a migraine coming on. "Admiral, please. This is not a game. The fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance." She looked at me, and for a moment I saw a flash of something in her eyes, something ancient and terrifying. Then she winked, and it was gone. "Oh, Ambassador, everything's a game. It's just that some games have higher stakes than others. Now, who wants to bet on how long this'll take? I've got 50 credits on 5 hours or less." The entire bridge erupted in laughter and shouted bets. I stood there, mandibles agape, wondering if it was too late to defect to the Zyx'narians. As we approached the front lines, I expected to see a fleet of warships sleek and deadly. What I saw instead nearly made me molt on the spot. The humans had somehow, in the span of less than a day, converted half their ships into what they called party boats. The USS Spring Break was trailing streamers and blasting something called disco into space. The HMS Rave cave had more flashing lights than a malfunctioning starport.
What is this? I managed to sputter.
Admiral Martinez clapped me on the back, nearly sending me sprawling. Psychological warfare, my dear Zyx'lar. They're going to confuse the hell out of them, then hit him where it hurts. Before I could argue, a communications officer shouted, "Incoming transmission from the Zyx'narian flagship." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Grand Marshal Vk'thorn, leader of the Zyx'narian Armada. His purple scales gleamed menacingly, and his 4 eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the human bridge. So he rumbled, his voice like gravel in a blender, "You are the humans we've heard so much about." I expected more. Admiral Martinez leaned back in her chair, looking for all the world like she was about to watch her favorite sports team. "Oh honey," she drawled, "you have no idea what you're in for. Last chance to surrender." Vk'thorn's laugh shook the screen. "Surrender? To you? Your species is barely out of its cosmic diapers. We have conquered galaxies while your ancestors were still figuring out which end of a stick was pointy." "Ooh, good one," Martinez chuckled. "Did you come up with that all by yourself, or did you have to assemble a committee?" The Zyx'narian leader's face contorted in rage. "You dare mock me? I will crush your pathetic fleet and use your homeworld as a parking lot for my victory parade." Martinez yawned theatrically. "Boring. Tell you what, let's make this interesting. If we can't beat you in, let's say 5 hours, we'll surrender unconditionally. How's that sound?" There was a moment of stunned silence, both on the Zyx'narian ship and on our own bridge. I was seriously considering jumping out of the nearest airlock. Vk'thorn recovered first. 5 hours, you must be mad or suicidal. Very well, I accept your terms. It will be a pleasure to humiliate you so thoroughly. The transmission cut off, and Martinez spun her chair to face the crew. "All right, folks. You heard the man. We've got 5 hours to win a war. Any ideas?" What followed was the most insane brainstorming session I've ever witnessed. Ideas were thrown around like confetti at a parade. Some were brilliant, some were terrifying, and some made me question my understanding of basic physics. "What if we hack their ships and make them play nothing but human country music?" suggested one officer. "Too cruel," Martinez shot back. "We're trying to win a war, not commit war crimes." "We could challenge them to a dance-off," piped up another crewman. "Save that for Plan B." The Admiral nodded sagely. Just when I thought it couldn't get any more ridiculous. A young ensign timidly raised her hand. What if we just ask them nicely to stop?" The bridge went silent. Then, slowly, a grin spread across Martinez's face. "Kid, you're either a genius or you've lost your mind. Maybe both. I love it. Let's do it." And so, in possibly the most surreal moment of my life, I watched as the flagship of the human fleet hailed the entire Zyx'narian Armada. Admiral Martinez cleared her throat and spoke in a voice so polite it could have smoothed sandpaper. "Attention, Zyx'narian fleet. We, the humans and our allies, kindly request that you stop this war and go home. Pretty please with a cherry on top." The response was immediate and predictable. Laughter. Uproarious, mocking laughter from 10,000 Zyx'narian ships. I buried my face in my appendages, wondering if it was too late to evolve into a less embarrassed species. But Martinez wasn't done. "Well, we asked nicely. Can't say we didn't try diplomacy. All right, folks, time for Plan Whiskey Tango Foxtrot." What happened next can only be described as choreographed insanity. Half the human fleet suddenly began broadcasting what they called rave music at frequencies that made the Zyx'narian ship sensors go haywire. The other half started performing maneuvers that looked less like warfare and more like a drunken ballet. The USS Spring Break fired what appeared to be glitter bombs, coating several Zyx'narian destroyers in sparkly debris that clogged their weapon systems. The HMS Rave cave projected holographic images of dancing humans onto the hulls of enemy ships, thoroughly confusing their targeting systems. And the USS Hold My Beer. It charged straight for the Zyx'narian flagship, blasting an ancient human song called "Never Gonna Give You Up" on all frequencies. I later learned this was something called a rickroll, and it was considered one of humanity's greatest weapons of mass confusion. The Zyx'narians, to their credit, tried to fight back. But how do you combat an enemy that treats interstellar warfare like a college prank gone nuclear? For every ship they managed to target, 3 more would swoop in, spray paint smiley faces on their hulls, and zoom away cackling. At one point, a squad of human fighters flew in a formation that spelled out "You may be, bro." In front of the Zyx'narian flagship, I saw Grand Marshal Vk'thorn's eye twitch violently on the view screen. But the coup de grace came 3 hours into the battle. Admiral Martinez, looking like the cat that not only ate the canary but also signed a lease on the birdcage, hailed Vk'thorn again. "Hey ya, Vk boy," she chirped, ignoring the murderous glare from the Zyx'narian leader. "Having fun yet? Because we're just getting started. But hey, I'm feeling generous. How about this, you surrender now, and we'll teach you how to party like humans. Trust me, it's better than the alternative." Vk'thorn's face had turned a shade of purple I didn't think was possible for his species. You're insane. All of you. What kind of warfare is this?" Martinez's grin could have outshone a supernova, the humankind darling. Now about that surrender. And just like that, 4 hours and 58 minutes after the battle began, Grand Marshal Vk'thorn of the mighty Zyx'narian Empire surrendered unconditionally to a human admiral who looked like she was about to burst into laughter at any moment. As the Zyx'narian fleet began powering down their weapons, the human ships erupted in cheers. Someone started playing a song called "We Are the Champions," and before I knew it, the entire fleet was having an impromptu dance party in space. I floated there on the bridge of the USS Hold My Beer, watching humans celebrate winning an intergalactic war with the same enthusiasm as winning a bar trivia night. Admiral Martinez sauntered over, a glass of something that smelled like it could fuel a starship in her hand. "See, Ambassador," she said, clinking her glass against my exoskeleton. "Told you it'd be a cakewalk. Now, who's up for an after-party on Zyx'naria Prime?" I hear their capital city has great acoustics. As the human fleet set course for the Zyx'narian homeworld, not to conquer, but to throw the biggest party the galaxy had ever seen, I couldn't help but laugh. It was either that or cry, and I had a feeling that crying would only encourage them. In the following days, as news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, I was inundated with questions from other species. How did they do it? What was their secret weapon? I tried to explain, I really did. But how do you explain humanity to beings who have never experienced the chaotic whirlwind that is human ingenuity fueled by equal parts brilliance and insanity? In the end, I simply told them this: they won because they were the only ones crazy enough to think they could. And as I watched humans teach Zyx'narians how to do the Macarena in the streets of their capital, I realized that the galaxy would never be the same again. For better or worse, and I still wasn't sure which, humanity had arrived on the galactic stage. May the cosmos have mercy on us all, because humanity sure won't. Epilogue. One standard galactic year later, I found myself once again on the bridge of the USS Hold My Beer. We were en route to the first annual Galactic Peace Conference hosted jointly by Earth and Zyx'naria Prime. Admiral Martinez, now sporting a new medal that looked suspiciously like a beer bottle cap, was regaling me with tales of the changes the past year had brought. "You should see it, Zyx'narians," she exclaimed, waving her arms enthusiastically. "We've got Zyx'narians and humans co-hosting intergalactic rave parties. Their emperor, ex-emperor, I should say, is running a chain of disco-themed diners across 3 sectors. And you won't believe this, but their former Grand Marshal Vk'thorn. He's Earth's new ambassador of interstellar culture." I blinked all 4 of my eyes in rapid succession. "You can't be serious." She grinned, that infamous grin. "Oh, but I am. Turns out, once you get past the conquer the galaxy shtick, Vk'y's a real party animal. You should see him do the moonwalk." As we approached the conference location, a massive space station shaped like a disco ball, because of course it was, I marveled at how much it changed. Species that had been at each other's throats for centuries were now planning interstellar karaoke nights. Trade routes that had once carried weapons now transported exotic party supplies and something called inflatable pool toys. The galaxy was at peace, and all it took was humanity showing everyone how to loosen up and enjoy the cosmic dance. As we docked at the station, Admiral Martinez turned to me, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "You know, Zyx'narians, some folks back home were worried when we first joined your alliance. I thought we might lose what makes us human. But I think we've done the opposite. We've reminded the galaxy how to be a little more human." I nodded, feeling a warmth in all 3 of my hearts. "I believe you're right, Admiral. Though I shudder to think what will happen if we ever face another threat." Her serious expression melted back into that familiar, slightly unhinged grin. "Oh, don't you worry about that. We've got plans. Big plans. Let's just say, If anyone else tries to mess with our galaxy, they'll be in for one hell of a surprise party. As we disembarked, stepping into a station filled with the sounds of 1,000 different species laughing, singing, and generally having the time of their lives, I couldn't help but chuckle. The galaxy had indeed changed, and humanity was at the center of it all. The conference itself was a sight to behold. The main hall looked like someone had taken a formal diplomatic setting and crashed it headlong into a New Year's Eve party. Delegations from across the known universe mingled freely, their formal attire clashing gloriously with party hats, noisemakers, and the occasional inflatable alien costume. I watched in amused horror as a group of Taraxians, known for their stoic demeanor and rigid carapaces, attempted to limbo under a glowing plasma beam. Nearby, a delegation of Vorpons, a species composed entirely of sentient gas, were learning the intricacies of the human fist bump with hilarious results. At the center of it all, like the eye of a particularly festive hurricane, stood former Grand Marshal Vk'thorn. The once fearsome Zyx'narian war leader was dressed in what I could only describe as a fusion of his species' traditional battle armor and a human disco outfit. The result was a dazzling display of scales and sequins that hurt to look at directly. "Ambassador Zyx'narian," he boomed, his voice still carrying the gravitas of a military commander, but now with an undercurrent of barely contained glee. "Come, you must try this human concoction they call a pina colada. It's like drinking starlight, but with a little umbrella." Before I could politely decline, I found myself swept up in Vk'thorn's enthusiasm. A drink thrust into my appendage. Admiral Martinez appeared at my side, looking entirely too pleased with herself. "See, told you Vk was a changed man," she said, clinking her glass against mine. "Who would have thought that all it took to end centuries of conflict was a good party and some questionable dance moves?" I took a sip of the drink, and to my surprise, it was indeed quite pleasant. "I must admit, Admiral, your methods are unorthodox, but effective. Though I do have one question." "Shoot," she said, using a human expression I had come to understand meant go ahead rather than an invitation to open fire. "What exactly is the agenda for this peace conference? I've yet to see anything resembling traditional diplomatic proceedings." Martinez's laugh echoed across the hall, drawing smiles from several nearby delegates. "Oh, Zyx'narian, you crack me up. The party is the conference. See, we figured out that most conflicts start because people, or aliens, don't understand each other. So what better way to promote understanding than to get everyone to let loose and have fun together?" I blinked, processing this information. "So there are no formal treaties being signed? No trade agreements being negotiated?" "Oh, there's plenty of that going on," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "But we're doing it the human way. See that group over there?" She pointed to a corner where a mixed group of species were huddled around what appeared to be a table covered in small cups filled with various colored liquids. "That's the Orion Arm Trade Delegation. They're negotiating new shipping routes over a game of beer pong. And over there," she gestured to a dance floor, where beings of all shapes and sizes were moving in surprisingly synchronized patterns. "That's the Galactic Alliance working out a new mutual defense pact through the power of the electric slide." I watched in fascination as species that had been mortal enemies mere months ago now laughed, danced, and negotiated as if they'd been lifelong friends. It was chaos, yes, but a beautiful, harmonious kind of chaos that somehow seemed to work. "I still don't understand," I admitted. "How can this possibly be an effective way to conduct galactic diplomacy?" Admiral Martinez's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw the wisdom that lay beneath her perpetually amused exterior. "It's simple, really. When you're having fun with someone, when you're laughing and dancing, and just being your authentic self, it's a lot harder to see them as an enemy. We're breaking down barriers, Zyx'narian, one ridiculous party game at a time." As if to punctuate her point, a cheer went up from the beer pong table. Apparently, a trade deal of unprecedented scale had just been sealed with a perfectly aimed ping-pong blind. Plus, Martinez added with a wink, "It's a lot harder to start a war when you're nursing a galactic-scale hangover." I couldn't argue with that logic. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn into the festivities. I learned the Macarena from a group of Andromedans, shared jokes with Zyx'narian diplomats, and even found myself in an impromptu karaoke duet with a Taraxian ambassador. Our rendition of Don't Stop Believin' would likely go down in history as both the best and worst musical performance in the galaxy. As the conference neared its end, Admiral Martinez took to the stage. The room fell into a hushed silence, punctuated only by the occasional hiccup or giggle. "Friends, aliens, party people," she began, her voice carrying the perfect blend of authority and mirth. A year ago we were enemies. We thought our differences were too great, our conflicts too deep. But look at us now. A cheer went up from the crowd, and Martinez had to wait for it to die down before continuing. We've proven that the universe isn't divided by our differences, but united by our shared capacity for joy, for friendship, and yes, for really terrible dance moves. This elicited a wave of laughter and some playful boos. So here's to peace, to unity, and to facing whatever the cosmos throws at us next, together. She raised her glass high, and remember, if any new threat tries to mess with our galaxy, we'll show them that we don't just party hard, we fight harder. The roar of approval that followed shook the very foundations of the space station. As beings from across the universe toasted, hugged, and in some cases merged temporarily into a singular celebratory entity, I felt a profound sense of awe. Humanity had done the impossible. They'd brought peace to the galaxy not through force or fear, but through the simple, powerful act of bringing people together and showing them how to have a good time. As the party wound down and delegates began to make their way back to their respective corners of the cosmos, I caught up with Admiral Martinez one last time. "I have to hand it to you, Admiral," I said, my voice hoarse from an ill-advised attempt at a Zyx'narian battle cry turned drinking song. "You've achieved more in 1 year than the rest of us managed in centuries." She smiled, but this time it wasn't her usual mischievous grin. It was something softer, more reflective. "You know, Zyx'lar, we humans have a saying, be the change you want to see in the world. We just decided to apply it to the whole damn galaxy." As I watched her walk away, no doubt to plan the next outrageous event that would somehow result in unprecedented galactic cooperation, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation about what the future held. One thing was certain: with humanity on the galactic stage, life in the universe would never be boring again. And personally, I couldn't wait to see what they'd do next. After all, if they could win a war in 5 hours and bring peace to the galaxy with a year-long party, who knew what they might accomplish next? Terraforming planets through the power of rock concerts, solving the mystery of dark matter with an intergalactic scavenger hunt. Whatever it was, I had a feeling it would be equal parts brilliant and absolutely bonkers. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. As I boarded my ship to return home, I found myself humming that infernal "Never Gonna Give You Up" song. The galaxy had indeed been rickrolled, and somehow we were all better for it. Here's to humanity, may they never change, and may the rest of us somehow keep up.